You see this cough? Folks think it's the tobacco. I let 'em think that. Truth is, there's a bit of mycelium 4 still living in the deep pockets of my lungs. It's been trying to turn me into a garden for 10 years. But I'm a stubborn cuss. I figure as long as I keep breathing out, it can't quite finish breathing in. Sit down. I'll tell you how I earned this rattle. I'll tell you about the man who knew everything, and the boy who knew nothing but how to keep walking when the world turns to mush. Mycelium 4 wasn't a planet. It was a giant, hungry lung. The air was so thick with green spores you could see them dancing in your flashlight beam like tiny glowing ghosts. The sporekin lived there, tall, quiet things that looked like a man made of tree rot and shell fungus. They didn't need to bite you. They just had to exist near you. I was 23, a dust eater with the Colonial Corps. My job was simple: keep the perimeter clear so the big brains could find a way to kill the planet. Then the main lab suffered a biocontainment failure. That's a fancy scientist way of saying the jungle decided to take its house back. I found Dr. Eris Thorne huddled under a pressurized desk, clutched onto a silver sample case like it was the Holy Grail. The rest of his team, they were already sprouting velvet mushrooms out of their eye sockets. "Get up, Doc," I said, hauling him by the scruff of his neck. My respirator was whistling. The filters were already clogging with that iridescent green dust. "The samples, Johnson," he shrieked, his voice sounding like a bird trapped in a tin can. "If the spore can get these enzymes, they'll learn how to eat the hull of every ship in orbit. We have to get to the extraction beacon." The beacon was 6 miles away, 6 miles of knee-deep black sludge and trees that moved when you weren't looking. We hadn't gone a mile before the first 3 stepped out of the fog. They don't have faces, just a vertical slit in the chest that pulses like a slow heartbeat. They opened up, and a cloud of concentrated spores hit us like a physical wall. Thorne collapsed. His high-tech respirator started chirping red. "It's too much. The concentration... I can feel him taking root in my throat." I looked at him. Those sporekin were waiting for us to stop moving so they could turn us into a nursery. I reached for my belt. I didn't have a pulse rifle. They jam up in the humidity anyway. I had a 2-gallon tank of industrial-grade Earth-made weed killer. "Doc, hold your breath," I growled. I didn't spray the creatures. I turned the nozzle on us. I doused our suits, our boots, even the doctor's precious case in that acrid blue poison. It smelled like a chemical fire, but the second those spores hit that blue mist, they shriveled up like burnt hair. The sporekin hissed, a sound like a wet log breaking in half. They couldn't stand the impurity of it. We weren't food anymore. We were toxic. "I'm 80% caffeine and 20% chemical sludge, Doc," I said, having him over my shoulder like a sack of grain. "Now shut up and keep that case dry. We're walking." I dragged him through 5 more miles of that rot. My skin was blistering under the suit, and every breath felt like swallowing hot needles. But I didn't stop, because a dust eater doesn't care if the air is clean. We just care if we're still moving through it. "Slide that glass over here, friend. The house red always tastes a bit like copper and kerosene, don't it? Suits the mood. You ever spend a month in the vents of a long-haul freighter? No? Well, don't. After 30 days of breathing recycled air and listening to the thrum-thrum of the reactor, your mind starts playing tricks. It starts trying to give the silence a face. The old sailors on Earth used to talk about a black dog, a shadow with eyes like burning coals that'd follow you down a lonesome road. See it once, you're lucky. See it twice, you're cursed. See it thrice, well, you ain't seeing nothing ever again. Out here, we call it the Engine Hound, and I'm the only man I know who saw it 3 times, and still has the skin to tell the tale. I was 32, working the 3rd shift on the SS Calypso, a rust bucket ore hauler. The ship was dying, leaking oil and groaning like an old man's knees. I was down in the maintenance shafts, waist deep in coolant and shadows, when I saw him for the first time. Just a pair of red lights at the end of the tunnel. I thought it was a sensor glitch, maybe a couple of low-battery LEDs on a pump. But then the lights blinked. "Hey!" I yelled, wrench in hand. "Who's down here?" The lights didn't answer. They just drifted back into the dark. I didn't smell ozone or oil then. I smelled wet fur and old iron. The second time was a week later. I was in the mess hall, late. I looked in the reflection of the glass observation port. Behind me, sitting in the booth I'd just left, was a shadow. It was shaped like a dog, but it was the size of a bear, made of the same oily blackness as a vacuum leak. Those red eyes were staring right at the back of my head through the glass. I turned around. Nothing, just an empty booth and the smell of cold metal. By the third time, the Calypso was falling apart. The life support was failing, and the long-haul psychosis was setting in. I was trapped in the engine room, the reactor red linen, and the doors were jammed. I was gonna fry. I turned around, and there he was, the Engine Hound. He wasn't a shadow anymore. He was solid. He looked like he was made of twisted rebar and scorched engine padding, his eyes two bleeding red cores of heat. He wasn't a monster, though. He was the ship. He was every fear every sailor ever had, given a body by the radiation. He didn't bite me. He just walked over to the jammed emergency hatch and breathed on it. The metal didn't melt, it just gave up. The gears turned like they'd been greased with ghost oil. He looked at me one last time, and I realized why he was there. He wasn't hunting me. He was waiting for the ship to die so he could take the souls of the crew into the dark. I was the only one who got out because I was the only one who looked him in the eye and didn't scream. I still see him sometimes, in the corner of a bar, in the reflection of a dark window. He's just checking to see if I'm still worth the walk. You ever wonder what a god sounds like when it's hungry? It ain't a roar, it's a hum. A deep thrumming vibration that gets right down into your marrow and tells your DNA it's time to be something else. I was 45 when I met the Gorgon Maw. It wasn't a ship, and it wasn't a fleet. It was a living nebula, a massive floating organism the size of a moon, drifting through the void and digesting anything with a reactor core. I was the head engineer on the SS Endurance. We were a colony ship, carrying 3,000 souls in cryo-sleep. When the Maw latched onto our hull, it didn't use grapples. It used digestive enzymes that ate through our titanium like it was wet paper. Within an hour, the ship was bleeding atmosphere and the rest of the crew. Well, the Maw's spores got them. They didn't die. They just became part of the stomach lining of that thing. I was the last one breathing because I was down in the chemical storage, looking for a way to stop the rot. I realized then that we couldn't outrun it, and we couldn't outfight it. You don't shoot a stomachache, kid. The hallway was groaning. The walls turned it from gray steel to a sickly, pulsating pink. The Maw was literally swallowing the Endurance. I could hear the wet, squelching sound of the ship's internals being turned into organic sludge. I didn't reach for a detonator. I reached for the Dust Eater's old stash. I went to the biolab and grabbed every vial of combat stem, every ounce of concentrated pesticide, and a gallon of industrial-strength adrenaline meant for restarting a dead heart. You want a meal? I growled, looking up at the pulsating ceiling. Fine, but you're gonna find out that humans are a bitter pill to swallow. I hooked myself up to a medical IV rig. I wasn't healing myself. I was loading my own blood with enough toxins to kill an elephant. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My vision went red. My skin felt like it was on fire. I became a walking chemical spill. When the Maw's digestive feelers, these long, pale tentacles, finally burst through the door, I didn't run. I stepped right into him. I let him wrap around me. I let him taste the poison coursing through my veins. The reaction was instant. The Maw started shaking. The walls of the ship recoiled. It was like the whole moon-sized beast was having an anaphylactic shock. It puked the Endurance out of its gullet, spinning us back into the blackness of real space, while it shriveled and died from the inside out. I'm telling you this story because folks think war is about who's got the biggest gun, but sometimes it's just about who's too toxic to eat. I don't fight no more because I know what it caused me. I gave up the softness of my soul to become a poison. And once you turn that bitter, kid, you don't ever quite turn sweet again. So, that's why I sit here on this porch watching the suns go down. I've been a garden, I've been a ghost, and I've been a poison. I've seen the universe try to break us in 100 different ways, and every time, we just got a little harder, a little grittier, and a lot more stubborn. War, it don't just take your life, it takes your human. It turns you into a tool, a weapon, a switch, and once the war is over, you're just a tool with no job left to do. So if you're looking for glory, kid, keep walking. But if you're looking for a reason to keep the peace, just remember the man who had to kill his own heart just to save a ship. It ain't a trade I'd recommend.